Okay, CC students, we're going to talk next about theory and theme of your case. Probably one of the most complicated things that we're going to talk about in the mock trial. And the reason we're talking about it now is that we're still down here when we're building our brick wall, right? We're still laying the foundation of the learning process and examining the evidence. And I would say the theory and theme concept is probably on our second row. When you actually make the theory and theme itself of your case, you're probably on like the third or fourth row. So why are we talking about it now? Well, here's what's going to happen, directors and students. In the next couple weeks, as you're going through the evidence in this mock trial packet, your students, you're going to inevitably start talking about legal theories of this case. And it's easy to get bogged down right at this part where you're going to want to explore the theories and talk about why you think things happen the way they did. So here's what I want to do. I want to go over what a legal theory is and what a theme is so that we have a good understanding, because when this thing pops up, when these pop up, we can know how to deal with it. So what is a theory? Well, the theory of your case is a combination of both the law and the facts that justifies a verdict in your favor. So it's both the law and the facts. And those two together justify a verdict in your favor. Two parts of your theory. You have a legal aspect of your case and a factual aspect of your case. What's the legal aspect of the case? Well, the legal aspect is simply the elements of the crime. What has in your mock trial packet, what has the defendant, what crime have they been charged with, and what are the elements of that crime? Now, staying away from this particular mock trial, let's talk about DUI. If the person had been charged with driving under the influence, you would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they drove a motor vehicle after drinking enough alcohol to render them incapable of safely driving, okay? Those are the elements of the crime. You can find those in your packet. But along with the elements, you can't just prove one or two. You have to prove each and every element. Going back to the DUI example, if I only prove that they drank alcohol and that they were incapable of safe driving, but I didn't prove that they actually drove their motor vehicle, I didn't prove each and every element. So to support my legal theory, I have to prove the legal aspects of the case. That's already been established for us. It's in our mock trial book. What are the factual aspects, the second part of our theory? Well, this is the story of your case. If you were going to describe this case to somebody who never read it and you told them about it, you would tell them about it in a story aspect. And I wish I wouldn't have told you that, because I would ask you to go out there and tell your grandparents or your brother and sister about this mock trial. But you would tell them the story about it. You wouldn't tell them about, well, we're learning about the glossary, we're learning about opening statements, we're learning about this. You would say, this is what this case is about. In this mock trial, this person is accused of doing this, okay? It's the story, that's the facts. And remember, we established the story by using the evidence that we've been given in our mock trial. That's how we create our story. That's how we establish our story. A story, though, has to be consistent with the legal elements of the case. So there's a lot of factual aspects to your mock trial case. The facts that you present have to be consistent with the legal aspects of the case. They have to be consistent. So you're going to pick, depending on the role that you have, whether you're the prosecution and defense, you're going to pick facts out of your mock trial packet that support your finding that the person either violated the law, if you're the prosecution, or is not guilty of violating the law. So they must be consistent with the elements of the crime in a way that you want to present it. Now, you're going to find multiple theories in this mock trial, and you always do. There's multiple theories. How do you determine which theory that you're going to use as a class? Well, you're going to collectively talk about this, and you're going to determine which one you're going to use. And which one do you pick? You pick the best one. The one that's the best. How do I know which one is the best? Well, the one that is legally sufficient, the one that proves each and every element. So it's got to be the legally sufficient one. And here's the one that most people miss out on. They stop when it's legally sufficient, and they need to pick the one that's persuasive. What one makes the most sense? Which one is the one that the jury is going to believe in? Which one is going to pull at their heartstrings? What is the theory of the case that is so persuasive that the jury will have no other option but to rule in my favor. So you're going to pick the one that is legally sufficient and persuasive. So when we're developing our theory, like I said, we have to identify what are the elements of the crime, and we're going to present the evidence in a factual basis. One thing that you can do early on as you're working through this is you would write down the elements of the crime in a checklist format. So for the DUI example, they operated a motor vehicle, they drove, they drank, they drove after drinking, and that they were they were incapable of driving safely. Those are my 3 things that I'm going to prove. I put it on a checklist. As I'm working through developing my theory of my case, did I meet those elements? I'd ask myself that question. Does the evidence support that? Do my witnesses help me get to that? And we don't put that checklist away, because when we get to the mock trial itself, we pull that checklist out and we erase the check marks, and we, again, as we're meeting each of the elements, we check it off. And defense should be doing it as well, because if the prosecution hasn't met the elements, they haven't proven their case. So we would make a checklist. What are the legal elements of the crime for our theory? And when you're talking about the factual aspect of your case, when you present the factual aspect, just offering evidence is not enough. So we can just put up the witnesses and the exhibits, but that's not enough. It has to be persuasive. What do I mean by that? Well, the witnesses and the evidence have to be credible. They have to have been able to perceive the event that occurred, and they have to be accurate. So if I'm the prosecution, I want to put up credible witnesses who knows what happens and who are accurate in their recollection of what happened. That's what I'm going to do. If I'm the defense, though, I'm going to look for witnesses that the prosecution put up, and I'm going to see whether or not their testimony was accurate or not. So when I'm presenting my evidence, I need to make sure that it is persuasive. How do we tell our theory? How do we develop our theory? The biggest way to do your theory is in the form of a story. Remember, I told you, if you're going to tell your brother or sister or your grandparents about what this case is about, you're going to do it in a story method. Humans, they respond to a story. They want to hear a story. They want to know what happened, because they can process complex fact patterns, complex events in the form of a story. You ever wonder why the news is popular when you watch it on TV? Because it's telling a story. It's a story. So, and in our story we have characters, they're the witnesses, we have a motive, and you may or may not have a motive, don't worry, it's not essential in this case, and a plot. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to learn more about that. But while you're developing your theory, though, you want to do it in a story method, right? That goes back to the legal aspects and the factual aspects to tell a story. I haven't talked about theme. That's the second part about this, and I'm running out of time. But your theme is a little bit different than your theory. Your theme grabs the attention of your jury or your judge. So it would be a phrase or a combination of phrases that captures the essence of your case. So it could be the mock trial example in the book talks about freedom and justice. That's a theme that's used. It's used a lot. Is justice and freedom. It grabs the attention of the jury. I'm going to give you an example of an opening statement. In my opening statement, the theme is walk, don't run, and you'll understand more about that when you watch the opening statement one. One of the most famous themes in the history of our legal system is from the O.J. Simpson case, and your parents can tell you all about what the O.J. Simpson case was about. But in that case, during a closing argument, the prosecution, they had a theme throughout their case, and that was that obviously that the defendant was guilty of the crime. But in the closing argument, the prosecution, they didn't have a theme that really brought the case home. They couldn't carry that theme throughout the case. The defense, however, they presented a theme that the jury went with, and ultimately was one of the most remarkable things. And Johnny Cochran used this phrase, and it was his theme, and it was, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. And that went back to something that happened in the trial where the defendant tried on the glove that was found at the crime scene and it didn't fit the defendant. Using that to remind the jury that if something doesn't sound right, that they must do their duty and acquit. So it was, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, meaning you must find the defendant not guilty. That theme was huge. That grabbed the jury's attention. It summarized what the case was about. And that came out at the end. The prosecution and defense both had their own themes that were a little bit different throughout the case, but the theme grabs the jury's attention. And it's tied to your theory, to your case. But two independent things, and the first thing you're going to work on is, what is your theory? What are the legal aspects, the factual aspects, and then you're going to come up with a theme that ties to the theory of your case, and something that can grab their attention, something that will help the jury believe what you're trying to prove. Thank you very much, and I wish you luck.